What?
Hey, baby. I can't do. I'm trying to do my dusty.
Baby.
Hey, baby. How you doing, baby?
How you doing?
I'll tell you what, baby.
Wrestling, watching from ringside. Is that you?
That's me, baby. Live and in living color.
Only on KXVS, baby, the voice of Stockton.
So people in the Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope land are tune in any way you want to because we are watching from ringside.
All day, every day, only on Friday, and maybe Saturday too. Sometimes on a Sunday, because you know they got them special shows. Know what I'm talking about, baby?
Stop stealing my gimmick. But
yeah.
Ben, let's get into all seriousness. This
Yeah.
is like, watching from ringside, as we were talking about, is a pro wrestling show. With
The
fun.
only pro wrestling show on KXVS.
Or in Stockton.
Or in Stockton, yes.
Yeah, come tell us if you're somebody else.
The premier podcast.
Yeah, the premier podcast of pro wrestling talk in the Central Valley is me and Ben, and it's fun. So we talk about the world of wrestling from our perspective and give you the latest going-ons of what's going on in the world of wrestling, right?
Yep. WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor.
All in
NXT.
too.
Yeah, and All In.
Which is brand new.
Brand spanking new.
So we're
Could change the face of wrestling as we know it.
We're gonna break down all of that throughout, well, whenever we have a show. So I'll tell you what, Ben.
What?
Watching from Ringside Fridays on KXVS, the voice of Stockton. For Ben Sanchez, I'm Dustin Brightbuilding.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
My name is Josh, and you're listening to KXVS, the voice of Stockton, 92.1 FM. Catch us live on Facebook, YouTube, and the TuneIn app.
KXVS, the voice of Stockton, live. The voice of Stockton at Stone Soup Studio. KXVS.org.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS, the voice of Stockton, or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff. The voice of Stockton on KXVS presents Challenge Mode with your host, Ben Sanchez.
Thanks, Gov. He's the best. He's amazing. I love him. He's the greatest.
He is the best.
He is the best. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning into Challenge Mode, the only entrepreneur show on the voice of Stockton, KXVS, where we dive into the world of entrepreneurs in the Central Valley, follow their passions, their dreams, their desires in building a better tomorrow. I am Ben Sanchez. You just heard Gov Don Madzuski. And tonight we have a wonderful guest, Cliff DeBaugh. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, Ben. I appreciate this.
Thank you. Thank you for stopping by. One thing I want to ask, I usually ask every guest that comes in that's new to the booth is, what are your thoughts on entrepreneurs? What's the first thing you think about when you think about an entrepreneur?
Oh, wow.
First thing that comes to mind.
You know, it's a great question, and it's something that when I started all this, I didn't really think about that side of it. I just wanted something I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, then it's like, oh, you're an entrepreneur. You're out there working for yourself. You're out there trying to make things happen. And it's like, okay, if that's what an entrepreneur is, then yeah, I admit to it.
Yeah.
And you're a little crazy too. Yes, that's true too.
Yeah. And what do you feel like the importance of that is to the community, entrepreneurs in their communities?
Well, it lets innovation enter the community no matter where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And the really great thing about Stockton is that we can do things here and we don't have the pressure like they do on the other side of the hill over in Silicon Valley. And I've been proof of that in the last year and a half or so. I've been out putting our message out there on being prepared for a 911 call.
Mm-hmm.
and I have the freedom of not having anybody really look over my shoulder and say, oh, you're da-da-da-da-da, and I can be free with what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a nice community to do things in. People are receptive. The population of Stockton is really awesome in their community support.
Mm-hmm.
And they do like to see new businesses here, no matter if you're making things in your garage or you're, trying to put something together tech-wise, or if you're even a baker downtown. The community does support you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and you're right, exactly, because we ran into all types of people within the past couple of years since we've known each other that have really got a lot of community support and really brought a lot of really creative, innovative things to the table, to see that they're, starting point from like a booth maybe at Stock Market into a brick and mortar, or into the Huddle, or Entrepreneur Lab. So for kind of tell the audience a little bit about what Cliff and Ready for Rescue, like what's a little background on Cliff first, I guess, before we jump into Ready for Rescue.
My background as far as work, what I used to do?
Yeah.
Well, I get bored easy, and I've done something different on the average of every 2 to 3 years. So my original start in the workforce was retail, and I got to where I could do literally everything in the store, from working in the warehouse, receiving, to cashiering, to managing departments. And that was kind of laid the base that I could start new things, and I could, direct people, and I could get my point across, and it gave me a certain amount of freedom within the workplace. And so I carried that forward. I got into home services, where I really liked it because I could work by myself and develop my own business out there within the home service industry and make a difference in people's lives with what I was doing, whether it was water treatment, generating leads, it was Alhambra Water, it was Swan's Ice Cream. I was interacting with people all the time, and that's something I really love.
Right.
And so you get that feedback, you get that instant feedback from what you do, especially within a community.
Yeah.
And you feed on that. It's not an ego thing, but it's an energy thing. That you get that vibe within the community that you're doing something good. People appreciate it, good products, good service. And this community does reward you for that. They've been very receptive of our message. And the concept of Ready for Rescue came about due to the fact that it's a common occurrence within industry, the home services industry, on a service call, whether it's a plumber, electrician, HVAC guy. The issue is the same with those service people as it is when you call 911 and you expect them to show up, just like you do a service person. And actually a 911 call is a service call to your home. So all my experience within those service industries was put together to lay out this system that we have that we call Ready for Rescue. And it's turned into a much larger project than I imagined. And it's gratifying from that aspect. Now I've got to get it out to market. And the project is one that we developed. First thing I did was I invented a light where you dial 911 and you can have a bright blue beacon out front that goes off. And then I developed a system out of that based on this home services industry. And the main 3 delays to the home services industry is the visibility of the house numbers, which we advocate. You've got to have that visibility. Then information, be it information from the customer on your home service for what you're going to repair, or information as far as your personal health and allergies during a 911 call. And then preparation. A lot of times service people arrive at the home to fix an appliance and they can't even get to it, or the appliance is still loaded with dishes, or something like that. So that you have to be prepared for an appliance technician just like you do for 911. We don't think about it that way.
Right.
And if you're not prepared, you're going to delay that responder by seconds in your home, and those seconds add up to minutes, which can make a huge difference on your 90-day and 1-year recovery. It's those small things that impact us. So we've put this whole system together to create the awareness as well as put products and services behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Pretty much is Ready for Rescue. We're saving lives because those seconds matter, right?
Yes, our mission statement is giving life a second chance when seconds count.
Right.
And those seconds are vital, and at a 30-second delay, if you're having a heart attack, can mean the difference of being on a ventilator for life or having a regular recovery, a normal recovery. So it is that important. And it's something that we don't think about as our home is our castle.
Right.
You know, we have these rules that we follow at work for why, you know, keep the aisleways clear and have your information ready when we need it at the workplace. And yet when we get home, it's like, woohoo,
Yeah.
you know, I'm done for the day. This
Yeah.
is, you know, this is the way it is. And yet when we have to do a 911 call, we panic. And that's the worst thing you can do at that time, because somebody, loved one in the house, needs you to be conscious and be able to speak for you because they can't.
Right.
And go ahead.
So the key things would be to take out of this is Ready for Rescue is visibility. You talked about a little bit about that. Information and preparation. So
Yes.
you got VIP,
Yes.
essentially, which is your kind of key core.
Right.
Okay.
Well, you don't want it to be RIP, you know.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. No. Obviously that's what the delays would.
Actually,
build up to
that's true.
right?
I mean, it's a serious subject, and you got to find humor somewhere just to relieve that kind of stress. And we're not treating it lightly by any stretch of the imagination. But the impact it has on people is really amazing. You get out and you talk to people, and they get very emotional for some of the things that's happened in their family. And what prompted me with the information side was I went and asked almost 100 people if they had their emergency information with them. And that was somebody in a wheelchair, somebody on a crutch, somebody on cane, somebody, you know, people with children out in the park.
Yeah.
And 99.9% said no. They would say they had their insurance card, which is great because that's a portion of the information. However, it's not something that would facilitate treatment faster on scene.
Okay.
And that's the important side, is the faster you can get accurate treatment, the better your recovery is 90 days out.
Right. So with Ready for Rescue, because I've seen this kind of process with you over the past couple of years since we know each other and seen it grow. You know, you've added kind of different key services in different areas. So do you want to talk about kind of some of the specifics?
Well, we have, currently it's on the website. It's readyforrescue.com. And we have a home inspection app where the consumer can log in, pull up this app, and do a general home inspection so they can understand where their delays could be. You know, and it starts outside their home.
Yeah.
Looking at their house from their neighbors, and as they approach, and see if they can see their house numbers and what may be in the way. It could be a flag, it could be a pot, it could be their neighbor's tree, it could be their own tree.
Fence, maybe?
A fence, yeah, even a SUV that's high.
Okay.
You know, like a 4x4. And we don't think about that. And yet, you know, I had a guy in Lodi, it was really kind of funny. He didn't want to cut his trees, so he kept moving his house numbers so he could see them.
Oh.
It doesn't mean you could see them from the street.
Okay. So he just was moving them for his own.
Yeah, because he didn't want to cut his trees down.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, oh man. And where they ended up, you couldn't see him because his trees were blocking the numbers, no matter how you looked at his house on the approach. It was. And I says, have you realized? He says, no, I never thought about it that way. And that's one of the things that we bring out when we talk to people is that there's not been any thought process in the process of the chance that there could be an emergency in their home and they have to dial 911. And while they're talking to the dispatcher, in the back of their mind, they're thinking all this other stuff. Can they find me? You know, what do I need to do when they get here? What do I, you know, am I ready for them when they get here? You know, if they have an elder patient, do they, you know, they have a DNR? Where is the DNR? That's a do not resuscitate.
Right.
And those things come into play while they're on the phone with the dispatcher.
Okay.
And who's my emergency contact? Who takes care of my kids? Who takes care of my pets? So we've looked at this incrementally within the 911 call to assemble the information on the other web app that we have on our site. And we call it a personal health profile. And it really does cover all those areas, as well as your primary care physician, your dentist, your identifying marks. We really put it together without looking at any other information that was out there, based on my experience in the home services industry, as well as talking to emergency technicians in the field, home services people for medical care, the aging in place, the caregivers that come in there.
Okay.
So we have industry input from the actual people that do it.
Right.
And so it really does give you a different perspective. And we have those a couple of people as advisors.
Right.
They're physician's assistants, but they've been on the home care side in a regional aspect, overseeing home care of a lot of people here in Northern California.
Right.
And you get feedback from insurance agents and the caregivers that are in the field. So I think we put together a really good program that when we launch, people are going to be going like, wow, this is a lot of information. Yes, it is. And actually, it's all important.
Well, and that's one of the things I liked when I started, you know, I've been a part of events with Cliff. You know, we've done last year we did the one at Arch Road.
Yes.
What was that? That one
Down
was
at
a health.
The Buddhist temple? That one?
There was the Buddhist temple one I was at too.
Yeah.
And then there was one at UOP. Now UOP was
that was the caregiver conference.
Okay, so the caregiver conference was
which
Arch
we
Road.
did in conjunction with Healings in Motion. It's a caregiver conference held every November, second Saturday in November this year.
Yeah.
And it's free to all caregivers. And you get people that are being appreciated for the job they do as caregivers. And you have 40 different vendors there normally or more that are within that industry that can answer your questions firsthand.
Yeah.
So that was I think I've been doing that for 2 years now, as far as having a booth there.
And then, of course, this year would be the third year.
Yes.
And then before that, you did the stroke awareness at University of the Pacific?
Yes, that's true. We did that, and they had leading speakers from different hospitals in the local area. And we had five hospitals there. And I know that I was volunteering, which I do in the community, and we had a little table set up, and we didn't get much attraction. And then at the end, I had a couple of minutes on stage and told them what we were doing, and all the hospitals came and visited the booth.
Yeah.
It was,
yeah.
We never heard of this. Hey, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We need the help. People need to be aware. And that's what I'm talking about as far as encouragement from the community. And it's not only the industry, but the community does that. And they were saying how needed it is.
Yeah. And I think that's where you can feel that obviously there's a gap there, and you're going to try and bridge that gap.
Right.
You know, with the services that you provide. And this is what's great, because, you know, sometimes you're looking for information and there's so much information out there. And I think this is a conversation we had one couple weeks ago, is that you have great resources. Like, you're in touch with all these key people in the industry who are advising you or right along with you. And, you know, we've gotten great research white papers on, you know, 911 calls, and that one paper that talked about the alignments. The cellular,
I'll tell you, I got to tell you, that was one of the biggest surprises. I went to a regional gathering of 911 dispatchers. We're a member of the National Emergency Number Association. And the speaker that was up there we had 4 speakers. And the first 3 were saying how great their location equipment was, the new software coming out, and with the next generation 911, which takes effect in, I think it's 2022.
Yeah.
And the last speaker gets up, and he starts talking about location and how the systems work. He was actually a CEO of Sunside Instruments, and they have the adjustment equipment for the cell towers.
Right.
And then he goes, we did the white paper for the FCC to draw up the location information for what the nation's going to switch to in 5 years.
Yeah.
And here's what we found. About a little over 40% of all cell phone antenna are out of alignment. And the room went completely quiet.
Yeah.
And a lady sitting in the front row raised her hand and she goes, "Can you repeat that?" They were totally stunned. And
Yeah.
I was sitting in the back next to the IT people for 911 out of Sacramento. And I leaned over and I said, "Is this true?" And they went, "Uh-huh, it's true."
Wow.
So that's
That's
why when
huge.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's why going down I-5, it looks like you're driving in the river sometimes.
Yeah.
Or if you're, over in the Bay Area, you can be turning left for the next half mile, and it says it's only 1,000 feet. Turn left.
Right, exactly. So this has to do with your cell phone and the apps that you use for GPS.
Yes.
That's all affected
But
by that.
your pizza guy can find you. It's okay.
Yeah. Somehow the pizza guy can find you, but the 911 guys can't.
Right. And I don't know what the mystery is. One of the things that happens is that they have signal bounce in the cities, off the glass buildings. When you get out into the rural areas, and like it's raining today in some areas, that absorbs the Wi-Fi signals off the towers.
Okay.
So you can get a false reading, or there are out in the real rural areas, there may be one cell phone antenna and they're trying to find you. So you can be, according to the paper, the white paper is you can be anywhere from 100 meters to 500 meters away from where they are.
Right.
So if you really were, laying on the side of the road and you roll down a hill, you're not near your car.
Exactly, yeah.
And your phone may be in your car. And where that location is showing you might be, you could be like a football field away, which is 100 meters,
Right.
or you could be almost a half a mile away on the other side of that.
Yeah.
So it takes more resources as far as personnel and equipment, and it's a much more costlier process. So we need to get a handle on that. And I think that's something that we could make an active plea to the citizens here to get the supervisors to some kind of county amendment. I don't know how that ruling works. That's out of my area. But
Yeah.
if you got questions on the system, talk to people in the system
Yeah.
and really research it. It's good to go in and look at the responders side of things in the Sacramento or San Joaquin County Emergency Services.
Yeah.
That's some vital information in there.
That's I mean, and it's huge. Like this information, when I first started work, doing some work for Cliff and started learning and researching more with him on some of these papers and everything that he was working towards. It was incredible. Like that paper right there. I remember reading that paper and I remember that story and I was like, that number is very, very significant and and everything. And, because you think about it today, like you're probably going to call 911 on your cell phone.
Yes.
A high percentage of people will probably use their cell phone. And
75% calls in California on cell phones.
And so when you're doing that call, location is so critical to know where, not just for, tracking it on your GPS, but knowing where you are, knowing the streets. Of course, obviously we talked about reflective house numbers and how important those are.
Right. And what's interesting is it's not only you that has an emergency. You can hear a noise at your neighbors. And I was at a friend's house and he actually had a diagram of the houses around him with their house numbers on it.
Oh.
And he knew his neighbors and they had phone numbers on it. It was part of the homeowners associations, but not everybody does that.
Right.
And in today's world, that's vital.
Yeah.
You don't know who your neighbor is most of the time, but it's important you know their house number.
Right.
It's a reference point for your home as well. And on the vacation side of this is what's not really thought about, is that Airbnb is really huge.
Yeah. Right.
And yet you got to find that address, and you have no idea what the house numbers are around you. So if something does happen, you can call in, but you have no clue where you are. And I had I was up at Tahoe City at a resort up there, and the condo I was in actually had a landline. And I asked the property manager, "You still got a landline here?" She says, "Yeah." I says, "Curious," and she didn't know what I did.
Yeah.
And I was curious. Is there a reason that you have that these days? She says, yeah, because people come in from out of state, they have no clue where they're at.
Oh,
And when they
okay.
use this phone, it comes up with the address.
Oh, okay.
So the
Okay.
responders know exactly where they are, even though they may be from Vermont.
Right.
And they're not going to, if they use their cell phone, they could end up with, they're going to end up with the state CHP office, and they
Right.
still can't give a point of reference.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using Airbnb, when you get to your destination, write the house numbers down around you.
Yeah.
Draw a little diagram.
Mm-hmm.
It would be really helpful.
And with all this information, and as you're building this out, when did that happen for you? Like when was the moment like I got to start? After you've been in the industry and you've been working and doing all these different things, like when was that moment when I was like, I got to start working and writing all this down for Ready for Rescue?
Well, I'd invented the light and got my patent, and my attorney called it a system. And I'm like, well, what do you mean a system? I don't have a system. He says,
Which is
and
the
he
Ellis
goes,
light?
get one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we call it the Ellis light. I don't know if we'll keep that, but it's called the Ellis light, and it's an acronym for Emergency Location Identification System.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I wasn't that far along. I was just happy to get the light done and get a patent on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a while to figure that out. And then,
Yeah.
when I looked at what I was doing as a service person at home, and then I started talking to other service techs,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started talking to emergency technicians, out in the field, when they park,
Yeah.
between calls. And I talked to them and asked them what their delays are. And it was, 100% of the time, house numbers, then information. And number 3 was necessarily preparation. It was children.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of times if you have a single parent at home and they have 2-3 kids,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to have somebody take care of the children.
Yeah.
And they can be delayed transporting that parent to the hospital because there's nobody to take care of the children.
Oh, okay.
So within our personal health profile, we've got a space in there so that if you have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, they could have different guardians.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might call the 8-year-old's guardian, but they're not going to take care of the 12-year-old.
Right.
Blended families.
Yeah.
So that makes it really as easy as we can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
And the other issue that you have within the system in home response is when you get multicultural households and the grandma is home
Mm-hmm.
and they're non-English speaking, and you have to have a child translate,
Mm-hmm.
and they may be the patient having a heart attack,
Oh, okay.
which really makes it rough.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the EMTs now are using a language translation program on their cell phone, but not everybody does that.
Right.
So we've tried.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was going
we're-
to say, is that something you're thinking about maybe integrating later on?
Well, it's within the information,
Okay.
and it just depends who's at home when all that happens, and if they know where everything is.
Mm-hmm.
The standard protocol for information is in the refrigerator,
Mhm.
on the refrigerator.
On the refrigerator, yeah.
Yeah, it's called Vial of Life, and that's the first program that was instituted so that responders could have some sort of information, even though it's not in depth, but
Mhm.
it's information about
get
the
the
patient.
basics, yeah.
Yeah, they get the basics. They get their information, emergency contact, maybe a doctor. It's not a real long form.
Mm-hmm.
So they look on the refrigerator. That's the first place. So
They still do that today?
they still do that today.
Okay.
Yeah, that's standard protocol.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And for anybody listening, just put the basics out there.
Mhm.
You can go on to readyforrescue.com and our personal health profiles
Mhm.
there. But until you do that, put the basic information out there.
Mhm.
It could help
Yeah.
somebody in your family.
Yeah. And the cool thing is besides Ready for Rescue and everything Cliff is working on and the website and all these services, you're in a book,
Yes.
which is it's this year, right? It came out this
Yes,
year?
it came out a few months ago.
So Breaking Barriers is the book. You can find it on Amazon.
Yes, under Breaking Barriers. And that was an interesting process.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your involvement with the book. Like, how did that come about, or who approached you about that?
Well, the compiler came to me, his friend, and says, "Hey, I'm putting this book together.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to be in it?" And I'm like, "Okay." You know,
Sure.
hey,
Why
you know,
not? Yeah.
anything for publicity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought it was a unique way to put information out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it was a year's process. And I wrote my chapter within about a month.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about it, and because I've been like, man, what am I going to write? What am I going to write?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about my background, and I thought about how I'd been caught. I had a rear end accident. I was unbelievably dizzy, sitting beside my car, holding my head while the EMTs are treating the lady that had rear-ended my car.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea where I was at. I just told them I was okay because that's the only thing I knew to tell them.
Yeah.
And I was in the service industry at the time, and I was going to my stop right across the street. It was a Mercedes dealer.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do all the paperwork, and you know they take the lady in, and
Yeah.
I'm still there. I didn't have anybody to call. They didn't know anybody to call.
Oh.
You know, that's one thing is when you're in a car accident like that,
Yeah.
they really don't have that information.
Okay.
That's why we made our information into a data card so
Yeah.
it could be transported with you.
Yeah.
But the idea was that was the start of it. I just didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And and on my story, I was walking into walls at the dealership trying to do my job.
Mm-hmm.
I was missing doors. My eyes just, man, it hurts when you walk into walls.
Yeah. That's not a special ability.
No.
You can't walk through
And
walls.
and the story it starts there.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
actually it starts with my family leaving me
Mhm.
because of the results of that accident. It was
Yeah.
life-changing.
Yeah.
And in the long run, it's been 23 years. It's actually the best thing that happened to me. However, it wasn't the best thing at the time. You
Right.
just don't realize it till later.
Yeah.
And it's about the stories about that incident and what I went through to recover to get to put Ready for Rescue together.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really grateful about the whole thing and being part of the process. What made the book really a success was that we had Jim Stovall and Roger Palmieri write the foreword and the preface.
Yeah.
And they have millions and millions of followers.
Mhm.
And I'm one of 20 some authors total.
Right.
You know, it's not me.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
This is a group
Yeah,
that
this-
has
so-
done some extraordinary things
Right.
through events that happened in life.
Mm-hmm. There's a compilation of
Yes.
all these authors, and actually some are most of the authors all from the Central Valley.
I know there's 3 local. Cami
Yeah.
Ferry that you know.
Mm-hmm. And then
And-
Dr. Julie Dameron Brown,
Dr.
who's
Julie Dameron
a
Brown, yes.
broadcaster here
Yeah,
and
yeah.
very well known in the community.
Yeah,
And
we should
then-
all get together on a show.
Yeah, we should
just author.
Yeah, and
our
just-
author show for
yeah,
Breaking
an author
Berries,
show
yeah.
for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's the 3 of you.
Yes, and then
Okay.
there's 17 others around
Yeah.
Northern California, and actually elsewhere in the nation.
Mhm.
There's a Olympic medalist that's I think she lives in Alaska,
Okay.
and we've got a lady that's a world champion brick breaker karate.
Oh,
lady.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
So there's some real. It's a real varied book within
Yeah.
that field.
Yeah.
And we're all in different fields, and the commonality is we had a major life incident
Mm-hmm.
that
That impacted
triggered
you, yeah.
something in
Yeah.
our brains that says, you know what? If I can get through this and I can recover and I can figure out who I am out of all this, I can do better things.
Mhm.
I can do greater things.
Yeah.
And that's really what's happening.
Mhm.
We're all doing our part
Yeah.
within the community.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was really cool. So talk about a little bit about the process of like once you had the story together, and you wrote out your draft. Now
Right.
that goes to somebody else, right?
Yes,
As
it
far
goes to an editor.
as an editor, and then they look it over.
Yeah, they look it over
several
and-
times.
and the first one you get back looks like it's bleeding because there's a lot of red lines
Yeah.
through things.
Yeah.
And they add punctuation where it's like, really?
Yeah, yeah.
and then you agree to it or you need. It's like, no, I want it this way for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They do make you sound a lot more professional than what
Of course
the average
they do.
person would write. I'm not, accomplished as a writer.
Yeah.
As far as verbiage and so forth.
But your story was so incredible, and I believe when that process was happening, I got to see the draft before you
Yes.
sent it off. So,
Yes.
and it was very, very cool, story. So you know, if you have time to pick it up, go to Amazon, Breaking Barriers.
It's on Kindle.
It's on
the
Kindle,
ebooks.
yeah, on the ebooks. You know, physical copy you can probably pick up as well.
Pick it off Amazon.
Yeah, so it's just a compilation of all these amazing people who have done, you know, like you said, different things in each field and what triggered them to make something even better. But all of that that's happened with you, and then where you're at now. Like, it's been quite the journey.
It has, and it's only starting.
Yeah, I know.
And there's some days where you're like, wow, what's going on? And then there's, you know, like, you just look at it and you're going like, if it's this way now, how much better can it be later?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what we're striving for. I have 2 co-founders, and they're very much into this. They think it's the best thing that they could be doing for their future.
Yeah.
And for the future of the community, because we're all into giving back to the community when we can.
Yeah. And another great thing is, besides you being in Breaking Barriers, you're also kind of spotlighted in different areas in the media. Of course, we saw you back in the Current magazine before, and it was in the Record before they shut down Current magazine. You were featured in there. You're also featured last year in the Central Valley Business Journal, another one before it shut its doors. So I mean, you know, you've had some press, and of course you doing the event things and getting out there.
Yes.
And within the past couple of years,
well,
community building was.
It's like Hollywood says, any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah. And they have been. You know, those are always good for the portfolio to let people know as you're doing your pitch, right?
Yes, and actually my first article that I wrote about house numbers was featured in the Caregiver magazine at Healings in Motion for their event.
That's right.
That was the start of all of it, actually.
Yeah.
It's been crazy, and it's going to get a lot better. I've had the chance to work with people with their house numbers and find out how personal those house numbers really are to the homeowner.
Yeah, and speaking of the house numbers, so we did a Valon's Natural Do hair show just passed, but we were at the first one as Ready for Rescue, and we were next to this hustling, bustling group of women who sold all their products, their natural products.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of getting like a flow of traffic from them to find out what Ready for Rescue was, and I feel like that's always the biggest opener for Ready for Rescue is the house numbers, and you have like long conversations with people about you know, I mean they know or they don't know, or they, you know, and
well we did a couple of the senior awareness days that happened on the last Wednesday or Thursday in May.
Yeah.
And the women would come up and they'd point to the house numbers. They're with their husband. They go, "This is what we need.
Yeah.
This is what I want." So that they have that opportunity. They're in the marketplace. Not that I've seen locally with what we offer,
right?
Because we offer like a 6-inch size, and I've put some house numbers in different places around town, and it's made a difference. And what's coincidental is a couple of the houses I did were for sale, and right after I put the larger house numbers on them, they sold.
Wow.
Which I think says something.
Yeah.
You know, and I've had 2 people out in the country, and their own relatives were passing the house, and they were ecstatic that wasn't happening anymore.
Yeah.
And also the reflective numbers let you see your house numbers in the fog.
Yeah.
You know, so if you have relatives, service people, you know, or friends coming over, because friends are kind of funny in that they can find your house the first time by directions.
Yeah.
The second time they may look at the directions, and by the third time it's like no problem.
Yeah, that internal mapping's already in there. Yeah.
But when you put fog in the way, they remember your house number for some reason.
Yeah.
They know how to get to the street, and they got your house number, and that's the way to see it is through the reflective numbers.
And that's I feel like that's always just a great kind of conversational piece, and then it kind of dives into the information and the light. And
you ask them questions about, you know, if you had a response, you know, a 911 response, have you, you know, or you know somebody. You know, I had a lady come up to the booth, and she was a real estate agent, and this was elsewhere in the state, and they had moved into a new subdivision that wasn't on the mapping yet on the responders.
Yeah.
They could see the lights flashing at night but the responders couldn't find them. And by the time they got to our house, unfortunately, her husband didn't make it.
Oh, man.
And so it was like, wow. And we, on the information side, I talked to a gentleman in Georgia, and he was in the hospital for 10 days, and even his best friend didn't know he had a pet dog.
Oh, wow.
And so, when the guy comes home, his life friend is gone.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, that's really a setback for somebody coming out of the hospital.
Yeah.
It just puts them back into a
Right,
into a
yeah.
depression.
Yeah, and
it's like, whoa.
And those are like you said, those are things that everyday things that just we don't think about.
Right. And that's the whole thing. We don't think about it.
Yeah.
Except when it happens. Whether it's at home or you're out on a trip. And on your emergency contacts, make sure you don't travel with your emergency contact.
No.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, that's not going to work out too well. So going from, the book and Ready for Rescue, now you've kind of entered back in this Entrepreneur Lab program recently.
Yes, the E-Lab.
The E-Lab at Huddle.
Yeah. Yes, with George Parrish and Barney Kramer and 4 other advisors to us.
Yeah. So talk a little bit, were you approached about that one?
I got a phone call from Barney.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And
I was at Huddle before it was officially finished 3 years ago.
Yeah. Huddle 1.0?
Huddle 0.5.
Oh, wait,
it wasn't even a 1 point.
Yeah,
it was a 0.5. They were still building the place and trying to get the floors dry. And at that time, unfortunately, we were, they were still figuring out the program.
Yeah.
And we had different community advisors, and they would try and help us, and we were pretty much on our own. And it's like, okay, I figured out a lot on my own, and I learned a lot from the people that I was surrounded by. Raul with his, and Pedro with Roadfinch, and Eric, that's now a community advisor at Huddle here now.
Yeah.
And Matt and Jasmine, and you learned.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't learn like you're doing now.
Yeah.
But you learn some basics. And it was a lot of research on my part on even just trying to figure out this whole startup scene. And being in the home services industry, I'm used to working with me.
All right.
I had to figure out, I watched Pedro, how he was putting a team together, and I watched Raul and how he interacted and networked, and the things that I hadn't really had to do.
Yeah.
So you learn from your environment. So I use that as a learning tool, and also community activism and being out with the Asian Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, Alzheimer's Foundation, Healings in Motion, all of those people. Those were all learning experiences that first year, and now I'm more actively involved in those organizations. And the thing was that now they've really got the program together. And we've had some really great speakers come in. We had Mayor Tubbs in today, saying how diverse the group is as far as what we're doing.
Yeah.
And the look is community. There's probably every nationality that's in this community as part of this group.
Right.
And we don't look at it that way. It's like we're entrepreneurs putting a company together, and I can learn from you too.
Right.
And George Parrish has got a great mindset on what he wants to accomplish. He's very good at the communication level. Barney's the same way. And we appreciate them for their expertise. I mean, these guys have been doing it a lot longer than we have.
Right.
And I guess I think I'm like the oldest entrepreneur in this group, as much as I hate to say that. Being 32 and a half twice is a privilege.
Yeah.
And, it's great to be learning every day.
Yeah.
And we get homework, this is learning.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And we have certain events that we're
be
requested to attend.
Yeah.
And it's really helped. And we did. What was kind of interesting is that George wants us to attend pitch events over in the Bay Area, which he has on the 18th of October.
Okay.
And one of the things we did at the first Huddle was I went, we got to go to a pitch event over the Bay.
Yeah.
My co-founder's from Sunnyvale. And just to get a look at what's going on in the startup scene outside of the valley.
Yeah.
And so we had we did a couple of road trips over, and it was like, it really spins your thinking.
Yeah.
so that you can get a grasp of what the startup scene's like and how people actually travel the world with their laptop.
Yeah.
And they can be in Amsterdam, they can be in Dubai, they can be in China, they can be sitting in Hawaii on a beach. They're working.
Yeah.
They're doing their coding and they're getting paid.
Yeah.
So it gives you a whole different view of the startup world where you can go.
Yeah.
And it's a learning experience completely different than what you get over here. And anybody that is thinking about even starting any kind of a small business, brick and mortar, small business, internet, it's worth going to those events over there. Yeah. And it's free, other than your gas to get to BART. And I use BART.
Yeah.
It's easier. And it network.
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And you'll find somebody.
Have cards, of course.
Oh yeah. You got to,
Here's my contact.
Yes, you got to have cards.
Yeah.
And they want to know what you're doing as well. This is the Central Valley, and George was saying that in today's lab that companies over there are starting to look over here.
And that's good.
And they're getting people from other countries start looking at the labs there, and they go to the event that George sponsors on the 18th of October.
Yeah.
And the opportunity is really here in the Central Valley because they can start up at a lot lower cost, so their budgets go a lot further here currently.
Yeah.
And yes, we're seeing a lot of change within our markets as far as housing and office space and so forth, but it's going to happen.
Right.
And it is a lot less expensive as a startup to get started here. And there's community help. There's all kinds of resources here.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting because, for quite some time, I think there was that kind of thought process that, talent's over there, or, there's no reason to look in this direction for certain things. But we're seeing that, right? We're seeing there's talent here.
You're right. You know why the talent's over there? Yeah. Because they live here and commute.
Yeah.
You got 100,000 people a day going over the hill.
Yeah.
And with the housing prices over there, it's rippling back this way and north, and they're discovering that because of the changes in the employee outlook, and, more time with your family. Yeah. Well, if those companies want to live up to that marker, then you've got to figure out a way that you can still keep your people productive where they live. And when you've got that many in the workforce going over the hill every day, and you cut back on it, it's got to help the environment. It helps our air. Yeah. We have that funnel called the the Altamont Pass.
Oh, yeah.
We might as well call it the Amazon Pass,
It might be some point the way Amazon's going.
Yeah. But we see Amazon moving over here.
Yeah.
You got a Tesla here.
Yeah.
Tech is here. It's just not known. And I like what Christine Fugazi is doing with the schools and implementing code. Cafe Coop is doing the H2O hackathon every year. So there is tech events happening here and tuning us up. And the interesting thing about tech is it's available to any age. If I can do it at my age, which I don't think I'm 65. I certainly don't behave like it.
Yeah. Not at all. Well, yeah.
And but at any age, it's one of those things. Yes, you can.
Yeah. With Lance McCann.
Yeah.
There's a cheap pop for
Lance. There,
for Lance.
Yeah. But the help's here, the talent's here, and they're willing to help.
Yeah.
Any way that you can. The city, Mayor Tubbs was saying how the city is willing to assist us. The county supervisors, the iHub is here, which is innovation. It's an innovation hub within the state. Industries. Yeah. But those resources are here. It's just that those resources don't have a lot of money to promote it. So that's why I'm talking about it.
Yeah, right.
But get hooked into Huddle, get hooked into anybody that is in the tech scene, and do your research. And if people want to get a hold of me, my information's on readyforrescue.com, and I'll be happy to help them, direct them as best I can. Mayor Tubbs gave us a website today. I think it's called Advantage San Joaquin, which lists all the business services.
Okay.
So that needs to be promoted as well.
Yes,
There's not a lot of
Advantage San
funds.
Joaquin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that was probably my next question is how come we can't find these resources because they're just not actively being.
Actually, the resources are just waking up
Okay.
that there is a need here. The need was here 3 years ago, but
Yeah.
you know, we were a small group trying to figure out what we're doing on the tech side.
Yeah.
And you know, since Pedro's still here with Roadfinch, and I'm still here with
Yeah.
Ready for Rescue, and Amy and
Ann.
are here with
Stock
Stock
Market.
Yeah. This stuff works.
Yeah.
So now it's getting to be the talk around
Yeah,
the community.
they're seeing that, and that's the thing. And a lot of people may not know this, but a lot of the entrepreneurs that have been in the show, they all know each other.
Yeah.
They all were,
yeah.
integrated in this, in Huddle or other places. And of course, that really is the only co-working space that I know of in the area. Beyond, obviously we have Impact or Impact Hub in the Bay, and then we have the Hive, I think, in Sacramento.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 up in Sacramento. I've heard there's a couple in Tracy.
Okay.
With what's going on in Tracy with industry and all, it's going to happen.
Yeah, but everyone that's kind of been on the show, Pedro, Cliff, Amy and Ann, and they're all cross paths at one point. And of course, everyone else, like Eric from Cast Iron and Valon, they were at Stock Market, and so but that's awesome because where you started then from where we're at now, it's you guys have all continued to push forward with your brands.
Well, with when I was at Huddle, when it started, I had the home inspection survey, but it wasn't a web app. Now it is.
Yeah.
We were still putting together the personal health profile. Now it's a web app.
Yeah.
And we'll be.
The card with the card.
Yes.
Yeah.
That you can download to our data card, and that's becoming reality. So now we're rearranging our website so that can go into beta testing.
Okay.
So but the home inspection app, that's there. That can be used.
Yeah. So you can go on to readyforrescue.com. You can check out
It's under apps.
The apps. So there's a home inspection app. There's also the profile app.
Yes, that's under accounts.
That's okay.
Like I said, it's being redone right now.
Yeah. So, but you can test those out. You can sign up and see what they have, because obviously for the home inspection app, I think there are options not just if if you're not a homeowner.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whether you have an apartment, if it's a
condo,
studio, condo, loft.
You've got all those avenues covered.
Yes.
In that app.
Yes, we put a lot of thought behind it. We had some input from one of our advisors who is an EMT over in San Francisco, lives locally. Yeah. Travels over there, does his shift and comes back home.
Yeah, yeah.
And some of the home care people as well. So, I mean, this isn't just us putting it together.
Right.
That's the important side. We do have people from industry. And they're working in the industry. I would name them, but I can't.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
But that's the important thing is you can generalize it as you're writing things out. We are working with those experts in the industry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And and when I'm out in the field, I'm looking at addresses. I'm looking at landscape. It's all I think about as I drive out in the country, on the freeway, city streets.
Because right now you're doing the stove installations, right?
As servicing.
As a servicing.
Yeah.
So this is something, obviously.
Right. I work in the, my day job is I am in the fireplace industry and I service pellet stoves. That's all I do.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for addresses every day.
Right.
I'm in homes every day. And the same thing that applies, location information and the homeowner being prepared and the visibility of their house numbers. It all applies no matter what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it gives me that little insight you know, when I get to the house, if I can't see something, it's like I can have that conversation with the homeowner because I know him.
Yeah. So as we're wrapping up, what's the one piece of advice that somebody's given you that's really come a long way for you that you can think back on?
Keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
I feel like that's the overall.
Yeah.
But that's all that, I mean, that's good. Like that's.
Yeah, I did the Entrepreneur Lab Challenge or Entrepreneur Challenge in 2012 with just the light. And it didn't work. You know, and
that was for a pitch. Yeah.
And we tested it 8 or 10 times before I got up there. And what I didn't know was the switch that operated the lights for the stage operated the outlet we had the light plugged into.
Oh no!
So I get up there and go, and I flip the switch. And this is our light, and nothing happened except dead silence from the audience. And then it was like, well, it is a prototype, and I just kept going. And then, you know, I go through all that, and the judges they were very nice, and they just said, keep doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and I get that from the hospitals.
Yeah.
Keep doing it because it is a valuable service.
Right.
And they realize that impact that we're going to have is large. You know, when you look at it, the U.S. Transportation Agency values a life at statistical values $9.2 million during our lifetime.
Right.
And a 1-minute time savings in a 911 call can save 10,000 lives. Their figures.
Yeah.
So that's $92 billion that could be put back into the economy every year. That's documented.
Yeah,
it's incredible. So think about that.
Yeah.
What, you know, we could have better infrastructure. That's, I'm a big infrastructure guy.
Yeah.
I don't like getting my car repaired because of all the, you know, the broken streets and bridges and all that, you know. And the financial impact on families. That's the main thing. Yeah. That this, you know, our information will help treatment on scene, and if you have allergies, it's really important. But the more accurate treatment you get at the start of that call when they arrive at your home, carries out and has less financial impact on the family. Right. So the stats on that from the World Health Organization is that, you know, 40% of families end up in a financial hardship because of medical expenses, and they cut back on their nutrition, which causes more medical expenses. It's a cycle. And 25% of those people end up in bankruptcy. Wow. So, you know, we can impact the economy in lots of ways, you know, saving lives, helping the local economy as well as the national economy.
And that's pretty, this is incredible. What do you think, Gov?
I think that's the right way to frame it. When we look at, you know, I mean, unfortunately, I mean, lives just, you know, they matter and we should care. But when you look at the economic impact, I think that's a great way to kind of wake people up to the immediate impact. I mean, you know, we have these emotional impacts, but, you know, our communities suffer when we lose people prematurely. So
email me or go to Sunside Instruments and then type in the search E911 white paper.
Right. So you can go to readyforrescue.com, and of course Cliff's info is there. You can email him for questions. You can request that paper. That paper was very helpful for me in understanding what was going on in the industry, and of course it's a trusted resource. Yes. And very articulate and very accurate. And so those are myself, you know, as a student and a scholar, those are things that are very important to me when I'm looking for information. So if you're looking for any more information or any more questions about Ready for Rescue, it's readyforrescue.com. Cliff DeBaugh, the founder of Ready for Rescue. And of course, I know you're branching out because you have Facebook page, you've got a Twitter.
Yes.
And I know this is all part of the
Twitter.
E-Lab. You were building it out as, you know.
Yeah,
as
we linked up on all those Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google Plus, and I'm leaving one out. Instagram,
yeah. So, you know, as he's building those out, but I know Ready for Rescue, I know the Twitter's on there. It's also a Facebook page, so you can go there too. and contact him there. But yeah, overall, this is beneficial information. Cliff's at almost every health care caregiver event in the valley, in the area, and of course you will be at the next caregiver event in November.
Yes.
What's the date on that?
That is November, I think it's November 9th or 10th. It's the second Saturday in November.
Okay.
And also we'll be there with Air Medcare, which is Reach Air Ambulance.
Oh.
It's a membership air ambulance service that can save people tens of thousands of dollars just from a simple membership.
Yeah. So he'll be there at the Caregivers Conference November. So be on the lookout for that in a calendar of events. And thanks for coming on, Cliff. It's been awesome, man. It's what a journey.
Oh, yeah. It's been a journey. And I want to thank Governor Don and the Voice of Stockton, KXVS, for their support this year as we're running the public service announcements.
Yeah.
It's a vital service to the community to remind them to be ready for 911.
Yeah.
And the
you're
E-Lab.
welcome. I think it's super important. And people don't think about those things like ever. And the only people really thinking about it is people who already suffered loss, or nearly.
Have been affected, yes.
Yeah.
So it's
And
good service.
The E-Lab for
shout out to
Yeah.
George and the
God,
E-Lab and Barney and all those advisors out there that are. You guys are the third.
Yes,
group?
we're the third
You're
group.
the third group. So, more to come. We'll probably check back in with Cliff later on as he gets further into the Entrepreneur Lab to see kind of what's going on with them over at Huddle 2.0. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. That's Challenge Mode again, Entrepreneur Show. We're here Wednesday nights at 6-ish. And you can find us on, we have a Facebook, we have an Instagram. That's Challenge MOD3 is how you get in touch with us. Our Instagram, of course, thanks for all our followers. We have almost 100 followers now. I got to thank all of those are entrepreneurs. It's all organic. None of those are
right?
bots.
Wow.
Almost all 100 followers are real, actual people in the Central Valley. So thank you guys for following us and looking at our content and, following our stories about what we do here in the booth and outside of the booth as well. So we have upcoming up this month. We have a bunch of entrepreneurs already set for October. So Heather Evans will be here next week. She's a singer-songwriter, wonderful mother in Sacramento, doing incredible things, and she will be showcasing her songwriting. We'll kind of pick her brain a little bit about how she starts writing songs. And I can't even keep up with her because her Instagram just is always on point. She does stories all the time. So, and she needs help too as well, trying to get on Spotify. So we'll kind of hook you up with that information as well. She's trying to get a little more active in that Sacramento community. Great podcast, Sacramento Songwriters. So you can look that up as well. That's our next guest for next week. For now, that is all we have for tonight. Governor Don will take us out.
Just to see